Welcome to the Safety and Risk Success podcast with me, Christian Harris. I'm joined today by Andrei Feraru, and we're going to be talking about hand-arm vibration syndrome, some of the trends, the size and scope of the problem, and some of the challenges that we've had historically in dealing with this. And all of this is the setting for what Andrei has done to develop this really interesting technology product, which recently won an award at the SHE Awards, and he's going to share kind of how that works with us today. So if you are in an industry that has a HAVS exposure, and Andrei shared that there are around 2 million people that are involved in that kind of work in the UK each year, really recommend you give this a listen. If you're not, I still think you'll learn something from it because it's an interesting way of approaching data, analytics, technology, and it's very aligned actually with the way that I and my team deal with slip safety as well. So I think whatever world of health and safety you're in, even if you don't have people with hand-arm vibration syndrome exposure, you'll learn something from and enjoy this episode. Cheers.
Welcome to the Safety and Risk Success podcast with Christian Harris. We believe that proactive safety and risk management powers business performance. Each week we explore this theme, sharing guests, stories, insights, trends, hints and tips. You can find us on all the major podcasting platforms, and video versions are available on YouTube. But for now, let's join the conversation with Christian.
Thanks for joining me today, Andrei.
Thank you.
So the last time we saw each other face to face, probably the only time actually, but anyway, the last time was at an awards dinner in Birmingham
Yes.
for the is it the Safety Health Excellence Awards, and you guys won an award. Tell us how that felt. Tell us what the award was for, and kind of what you did to be awarded that honor.
Yes, it was really exciting. I remember going there and thinking, "Oh, I'm actually gonna win this, or is this just gonna be a nice dinner?" And I was really excited to find out if I actually won or not. And I remember going to the bathroom and washing my hands, and there was Alan Murray close to me, who was the president of the BSI. Who actually awarded the awards, and I asked him briefly, like, do you know if I won the award, or I couldn't keep it in, and he just smirked at me and said, you'll find out, it's good news. So I didn't know if I won, but I was hoping even more than. And then when they actually awarded me the Innovation Award for product safety, it was amazing. I actually felt like all this hard work and all the nights that I've spent documenting the process that we're doing and liaising with clients, understanding the requirements of the marketplace and designing the product so we can meet the needs. It felt all worthwhile. For a few seconds, it did feel like great. Finally some recognition from such a great organization like the BSI to get that. It's just really means a lot for me personally and for the team here as well.
Yeah. No, it's great. And we happened to be on the same table, and we had I think did we have one or two other awards on our table as well? We were quite a powerful table.
There was another one, I think, at our table.
Well, you did one better than me in this, not the same award category, but the same awards about 2 years before. We got a highly commended, so we got a second place.
Nice.
And even that was pretty good, but I didn't get to go up on stage, so you definitely beat me out on that one.
Yeah, it was nice. It was a good experience, and it was quite entertaining as well. The whole experience.
Yeah, it was good. The comedian was good, wasn't he?
Yes.
He was pretty funny, and the food was decent as well, like you said. So
good, yeah.
you did at least get a good meal, even if that was all you would have got. So since you won the award, then how's that kind of helped in terms of springboarding the business on and raising the profile of what you're up to and so on?
Yeah, I think it did help. We did get quite a few inquiries after, and just congratulation messages on LinkedIn when we post about our success. But we did get to start working with 2 businesses just off the back of that. recognition from the BSI.
Nice.
And I think it was really important that we got that recognition, because we've been facing challenges from the marketplace and from industrial bodies with regards to our technology and how it works and if it's compliant or not. So having that recognition and having that stamp is really important for us.
Yeah.
And yeah, previously, they were supporting similar technology in the marketplace, and now obviously they went to us. So it's a game changer, really. That award really did change the perspective, I think, at least in the manufacturing industry and the landscaping construction kind of industry. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good stuff. We'll get more into that as we progress. But I thought maybe it'd be useful for the audience if you could just sort of set the scene a little bit in terms of the problem that your technology and solution helps to address. Kind of give us a flavor for the size and the scope, in terms of, people hurt or costs or claims or whatever it might be.
Okay. So we solve hand-arm vibration syndrome. We try to prevent it, essentially, and we've joined the marketplace in 2018, when it was really just about measuring on the tool, or there were some technologies out there that were trying to measure on the wrist or just anywhere on the tool, and it was a bit chaotic. But yeah, it's a big problem in the UK, because the HSC is heavily involved in this marketplace, and it's going out for inspections and finding businesses. So, for example, in 2023, we have statistics that we've kind of condensed statistics from the HSC and the BSI and other publications online that show there are about a little bit more than 2 million people, 2,200,000, I think, people exposed on a daily basis to vibration just in the UK. And in 2023, there were 125 companies that were inspected for HAVS specifically by the HSC. And I think 20% of those were actually fined, with an average value of the worker compensation being about 18,000, and the average fine value about 250,000. So it that's a devastating impact on the business if you had that kind of don't think, first of all, reputationally, people don't really want to work for employers that don't protect them. And then financially, that's a big stress on the business.
Yeah. And even if you're not, even if you are a big business, £250,000 is still however big a business you are, that's still not an insignificant amount, is it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like I said, we joined in 2018 with just an idea. At that stage in 2018, it was just about how can we do things better? How can we leverage existing technology that now advanced at the, in 2018, accelerometers were relatively smaller than they were in 2005 when the standards were published. But now in 2024, they are even smaller and even better in terms of measuring vibration. So it's quite easy to incorporate new technology into a wearable product. And if you make sure that you put the sensor in the right place, as per the ISO standard, then it's a no-brainer to try and measure more accurately.
And when we're thinking about the measurement, then I'm not an expert in this, so you'll have to forgive me. But are we measuring two things? Are we measuring kind of force, let's say, and duration in simple terms?
No. So in simple terms, vibration is split between amplitude and frequency.
Okay.
So we're measuring the amplitude of vibration according to ISO standards, and we're also measuring the frequency of vibration. So the difference between amplitude and frequency is the amplitude is how much you're fluctuating from the normal state. And the frequency of vibration is how harsh is that vibration? How fast are you vibrating?
Right.
And we have a patent on getting data from the vibration frequency side and displaying it into a reasonable form on our dashboard. And of course, yes, like you said, it's about the time of exposure as well. So it's very important how much you are exposed to vibration in terms of seconds of exposure. And we
Yeah.
capture that data very accurately on the palm of the hand.
Okay. So the sort of 2 million number that you gave, is that the people that are not necessarily being overexposed, but they're just being exposed because their job involves something where they're going to be around vibration?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the 2 million people are essentially over 2 million people are constantly on a daily basis working with power tools such as grinders, jackhammers, compact drills, even landscapers, power mowers, trimmers, um, anything related to holding something that vibrates with your hands.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you'll be surprised on just how little it takes to get over the exposure action value. So yeah.
Yeah, because that was going to be my next question, was kind of how do you, yeah, well, is how frequently are people kind of going over that threshold, and is that you know is that mostly because of uh the time element? So in other words, they're at a level that's probably okay on its own, but it's because they're doing it day in and day out, and therefore that's what's building up the problem? Or is it more that actually because of the maybe lack of control measures or lack of understanding or whatever, people are kind of being exposed to shorter, sharper, but more harmful kind of doses, for want of a better term?
Yes, I think there's an element of that in terms of lacking control measures and lacking awareness in general about hand-on vibration syndrome. But the ISO standards specify a daily limit for exposure, so it's a formula that's being standardized, and the essentially, if you work, we've seen it in the construction industry mainly. We've seen cases of going up to the action value within the first 10 minutes of work.
Mm.
And that's really mainly because the equipment is just not maintained properly, or the operator is really squeezing on the handle to
Yeah.
do the job faster, or to do it more the way he was trained to do it, or the way he's used to do it.
Mm. And what are the sort of typical health sort of degradations, injuries, etc., that are caused by hand-on vibration syndrome?
Symptoms always start with tingling and numbness in the fingertips. Then they progress quite fast to damage to the median nerve. So that'll be musculoskeletal damage to the bones and the median nerve on the hand. And then in advanced cases of HAVS, you go into vascular problems. So blood doesn't circulate in your fingertips. When it gets cold, if you have a sudden change of temperature, your fingers go white, and that's why it was called vibration white finger in the past.
Mm.
And yeah, it's crippling. So you can't button your shirt, you can't hold someone's hand, a cup of tea, or normal things become difficult to do.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I know that you have been doing some work in different countries, and you
Yeah.
mentioned when we had a pre-chat that there are kind of some differences between, the drivers of uh, compliance or not in different markets. What kind of observations have you had in that space?
So we've started in the UK, and we quickly build up a list of customers within the first few months of launching the product. But then Canada started reaching out, and Canadian organizations started understanding more about what can be done with new technology. And they came from a very different perspective. So in the UK, it's really all about how can I protect the workers? How can I protect the company from fines from the HSE?
Yeah.
And how can I do this in the cheapest, most easy, to implement way?
Yeah.
In Canada, it came more from a insurance perspective. So we've been contacted and we work with a company there that essentially regulates the premium levels for um, the construction industry.
Mhm.
And they got a few packs of half century of our kit, and they go around different work sites doing risk assessments on HAVS, and then they understand, okay, the risk level is actually low, medium, or high, and they regulate the premium levels that way. And then, of course, if you implement the system and take care of personalized control measures, the way the system is designed, then you get to the lower end of the insurance policy. And then recently, this year in 2024, we started working with some US organizations as well. And again, they came from a very different perspective, and the perspective was litigation cases. So people looking at claiming for HAVS, and they needed data to understand what the operator is actually exposed at the place of work, and then kind of providing that transparency for the court case to be judged appropriately, because they were suspecting that some workers were actually doing some work outside of work that were also
Yeah.
contributing to this. And it was an interesting one. And the National Safety Council was actually very instrumental in us reaching out to the US industry with our solution, and
Mm.
we're still working quite closely with them to get our solution out there in the US.
Oh, good. So differences in driving forces in different parts of the world. What about what about technology generally, more broadly? Things like AI, for example, because obviously the UK was 150 years ago, going through the Industrial Revolution, and so I imagine that that 2 million number would have been much bigger in equivalent terms. Obviously, the population was different, but there were more activities going on that would be potentially exposed. How's technology sort of changing the exposure levels from the perspective of, I guess, the number of people that will be exposed and the types of jobs that are being maybe automated or done in a different way? How's that changing things?
I think I'll leave AI for the last
Hmm.
part of my answer. Initially, I want to talk about the tool manufacturers. I think they're doing a really good job actually on building and releasing new tools with lower and lower vibrations.
Mhm.
But I think they've reached the limit now. So because of obviously battery, I think the battery powered tools are kind of peak right now on what can be done about vibrating tools. And
Yeah.
because of the limitations of battery sizes, and they can't go smaller than that, or improve any more on efficiency, I think we're at a peak of how much vibration can be dampened from the tool itself.
Yeah.
Now going forward, automation, of course, is probably the answer to eliminating halves altogether. So in, I'm not sure how many years time, uh, there will be no one actually required to hold a power tool, because there will be robots doing the roadworks, robots doing the manufacturing, robots doing all of the activity that human beings are
Yeah.
compelled to do in right now. And
I think
that
that's a
poses
few
a
a
bigger
few a
challenge.
few good few years away though.
Yes, yeah, I think the window of opportunity for for us as a HAVS solution is still there for at least another 20 years, maybe even more.
Hmm.
And that's just in the UK. Obviously, the developing world will catch up a lot later.
Yeah.
So there's still, there will be still a requirement to look at measuring vibration the way we do it now
Yeah.
in other countries.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's probably how I see the vibration market evolving towards automation. And then on the AI side, this is really exciting because I think in not very far away from now, maybe just a couple of years, if all the data that we collect right now, and we have algorithms that run customers through implementing control measures, for example, that will be fully automated. So there will be no need for human intervention before the decision-making process starts. All the data will just be shown to you in the same way occupational hygienists perform HAVS risk assessments right now. That will be 100% automated in the next few years. And so we try to build the database to do that. So with all of our clients, we do have the database being built for us in a way from the work environment itself. So we have actual real data, and we label that with all the tools that are being used with the anthropometrics of the human that is actually performing the activity. So we're going to have probably the most accurate database in the world in a few years. And we can definitely contribute to that AI powered world.
Yeah, it's AI definitely a topic that I'm very, very interested in and excited by. So you've given us a great overview then of the problem, some of the trends, the problem in terms of the size of it. Let's start to look at actually, what are some of the insights that you had around the efficacy or lack of efficacy of the control measures, the kind of more traditional control measures, that led you kind of down this path of getting to where you are now and winning an award and expanding internationally and so on. What was it you saw that we were doing kind of not very well as a world?
Yeah, so for me it all started when I was an engineer. So I used to work for an aerospace business on airplane engines. I had nothing to do with health and safety or occupational hygiene at the beginning of this, and it was quite a coincidence that I was doing a tour of a factory somewhere in Derby, and somebody came to the occupational hygienist that I was walking with on site and said, "Oh, I feel tingling and numbness in my fingertips, and how should I continue or what should I do?" And the answer was follow the procedures. If you've worked your time on the tool, then you should stop. And that kind of struck me a bit odd. So I did a bit of research on HAVS and understood a little bit more about how it's being managed. And it was at the time it was just two manufacturers' datasheets were basically the rule, and the two manufacturers' datasheets were declaring the vibration values of that tool, and then the occupational hygienists would either do their own measurements to understand if the two manufacturers' datasheets were actually accurate with their activity, and then they will propose trigger times or how much you can actually work with the specific tool. And that to me was an estimation, and it wasn't really good enough. And I proposed an improvement to that as an employee of that business, and they said, "Sure, you go ahead and try to make it happen." So I started prototyping devices and trying to measure vibration more accurately, and then I added other factors into that, so grip force, hand orientation, posture, the anthropometrics. Like I said, who's actually holding the tool. That's very important on how vibration is being generated and absorbed. It was very obvious at some point that there's really nothing out there that can take all of those variables and put them into one dashboard and show someone, a clear picture of their exposure. So I tried to build that, and took 6 years in a lot of hurdles in place from HSC, from competitors, from the market in general, and the lack of knowledge about HAVS. But yeah, we're still going, and we've definitely conquered some of the challenges. The HSC released new guidance in December 2023 that allows for palm measurements and allows for measurements to be done with the handheld adapter, essentially as per ISO 5349. So we've definitely overcome a lot of the challenges. But yeah, to answer your question a little bit more directly, initially it was really just two manufacturers' data, and we know now that after we've done all the research that's a really high level of underestimation, because they essentially what they do is they hang the tool by a thread and they let it vibrate idly, and they record the value and saying this tool vibrates at this level, and that's what they publish on the datasheet. But then when you actually go and touch something with that tool, the vibration changes.
Yeah, you've got a force, so get a reflective force coming back at you.
Exactly, yes. And how hard you're gripping the tool, who's actually holding the tool, what posture, what hand orientation you're deploying to do your job. That also influences a lot on vibration that's being generated by the tool and vibration that's being absorbed by the hand. So yeah, I said it's just not enough, and people were still claiming cases of HAVS. Even though the tools were improving, cases of HAVS were growing every year. So there was clearly something wrong in this industry, and well, we hope that we've made a positive impact.
It's very aligned to what I try to do in my world of slip safety, in terms of really getting into the science and the measurement, and not just kind of going with the old ways, and it feels like this, or my misconception is that, but really trying to get some scientific data where it counts, and where it can make an impact, and trying to change people's mindsets around that. So yeah, I was keen to have you on because it really aligns with the way that I think about stuff.
Great. Yeah, and there's still a lot of misconception as well. People think just because it's a wearable device that companies will be inclined to use it continuously, and that defines the HSC position on HAVS. But it's really not the case, especially with our system is designed to capture enough data within 5 days of measurement per each employee exposed, and then you can stop measuring. You have all the data you need. You don't need to measure anymore. Control measures and the root cause of exposure will be very obvious after you do an extensive period of measurement that's individual based. So let the person do his job naturally without somebody having to follow them around with the wire, or doing 10 minutes recordings on the tool. So we try to make it as personalized as possible and take into account all of the variables. And then it's very obvious if it's the tool, if it's the consumables of the tool, if it's the posture, if it's grip force. The data shows you exactly what's happening.
Very, very interesting. And as you said earlier, the machinery has kind of reached maybe its limit, or it's close to its limit. So it then comes into these other things that we need to focus more on. And would it be fair to say that, historically and without the benefit of this data, people have probably been focusing much more on the machinery bits and less on these other things?
Yeah, and then that's only natural because, in 2005, when the ISO standard about HAVS was published, 5349 and 8041, when those standards were published, the accelerometers were huge compared to what they are today. So you won't be able to fit one on the palm of the hand and do your work normally. You had to have it mounted on the tool. And that's why I think, like you said, the focus was really about, is the tool in good condition? Is the tool the problem? And I think it's still the case that most of the time the tools are the problem, or either the tool or the consumable of the tool are causing the problem. And it is sometimes grip force can be a big factor, but that can be easily mitigated. You especially if you have the data to show someone you're actually gripping too hard, then they change their behavior, and just within a few days, then they're not exposed anymore. They can work longer. They can do more
yeah.
jobs.
And that benefits you as the business because they're going to be
Yeah.
more productive and so on and so forth. So have you got a couple of examples you could share where people have kind of implemented the product and then they've got all those insights from the data and then they've taken the steps to change things and improve things and what that has meant to them?
Yeah, 100%. So landscaping, it's a really good example in this case. We work with a company that does landscaping work for the Ministry of Defense, and they've deployed the technology to over 200 people now. And again, it's not a measurement unit per person. They can share the measurement units, so it's you only need as many as you need to gather the data. And then they started at the point where it was all paper based, and they were doing the risk assessments based on manufacturers' data sheets and some available databases out there. One of them is free from the HSE website. And they were doing manual calculations essentially on Excel or on paper based on feedback from the operators themselves. So they were asked, how long have you used this tool? Oh, all day. I've heard that, all day. Or 2 hours, 3 hours. It's really just whatever they can remember, and they do a calculation based on the feedback of how much time was spent on the tool, and times that with the vibration amplitudes, and do the A8 formula basically. So we came into that environment. We've revolutionized it really. We showed them what actual jobs are really carrying all the risk. They've structured within, I think they've had data in place within 3 months for the whole of the workforce. And then after that, it was very obvious who needs to change job rotations, how they need to be managed, to spread the exposure more evenly. And then what tools were the problem. They've replaced them. There were some really old tools that they were using to do the mowing. So they've replaced those, and the exposure is still going sometimes over the action value, and they can capture that and still work on continuously improving to as low as reasonably practicable. But it's just a case now of measuring every quarter for a few days just to make sure they don't exceed the limits anymore based on the control measures they've set in place. So I think it's quite easy to transform your workplace from a paper-based system or a monitoring solution that is relatively unreliable based on estimations, to a fully working control measures focused approach. So yeah, that was one really good example, and probably the biggest rollout we've had successfully done so far. And then councils and construction in general, those are also really good case studies, because we've just done this year 3 really solid reports for control measures. The occupational hygienist of the organization did them with our support, and the results are really amazing. So people working just a few minutes, like 10, I think it was a case where 12 minutes, they reached almost 300 points, so very close to the exposure limit value now. And within just a few days, that was they put more people on that job, they replaced the tool, and now nobody's even reaching the exposure action value. So data is everything. That's what I think. In a few years, probably 5-7 years, if you don't have data as a business on not just vibration exposure, but your business processes in general, if you don't have data on your processes, it will be like not having a website for your business, or not having a camera on your mobile phone. It's just something that we take for granted now, right? You don't buy a phone unless you have a camera. But when the camera came out first, it was like, wow, I have a camera in my pocket.
Yeah.
So it's the same. It's the same thing with data.
Amazing how the world has changed. So Andrei, thank you for that. If people wanted to learn a bit more, arrange a demo, etc., get in touch with you, what are the best ways for them to do that?
I think through the website, like I just said, website. It's the bread and butter right now for understanding what we do and how we do it. Submit a demo request there, and we'll come in and we'll do some measurements with our technology. And even if you don't think it's the right fit, at least you have those measurements that you can compare with whatever you've done in the past.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Perfect. Great. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I learned a lot, and it's great to see another company, aligned to that mission of trying to get more measurement and data and be preventative. So fully supportive of that, and I'm sure everybody that has joined us today will have got something from it as well. And as I say, if you do work in this kind of world, then reach out to Andrei and learn more. So thanks to you, Andrei. Really enjoyed it, and thanks to you for joining Andrei and I on this episode of the podcast. And we'll see you again on the next one. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for joining us on the Safety and Risk Success podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please hit follow and do share on social media. Does anyone you know spring to mind as a great guest, even yourself? If so, please contact us on podcast@slipsafety.co.uk. See you next week for another episode.